Hey guys, welcome back to the next part in this chapter. Today we're going to take a look at Zmodeler, and this is going to be a very quick just overview of the whole system. We're not going to go in depth into the tool. I just want to explain the basics of the modeling techniques inside here of ZBrush. So in order for me to do that, I actually have opened here Maya and Blender, two of the mostly widely used 3D softwares, to show you that the exact same things that we have inside of Maya and Blender over here are going to be present inside of ZBrush. So as you guys know, in the industry, there's the softwares or the programs are continuously trying to fight each other to be the one up at the top, right? So every single software wants to be the one that everyone picks so that they sell more softwares, more licenses. And in this case, I'm gonna go here into the tools section. I'm gonna click Polymesh 3D. This is not a basic ZBrush course, so I hope most of these things are already up there with you guys. So I'm just gonna go into initialize and I'm gonna say key cube. I'm gonna move this down to 1, 1, and 1 and say key cube. And what I have right here is pretty much just a single cube. There we go. A single cube with 6 faces, okay? So we all know from Blender, from Maya, that we're going to be going into the specific components of an object. Every single object has faces, vertices, and edges, and we're going to be editing. So for instance, here in Maya, I'm pressing Ctrl E to extrude one section, I'm pressing Ctrl E to extrude this section again, and then I can go, for instance, to this guy right here and select bevel, again, to just bevel the whole thing, and do all sorts of things and modifiers inside here of Maya. Well, the exact same thing we can do inside of Blender. We just need to go into edit mode, go into face mode, grab the face, we extrude, pull this up, we select this face, pull this out, and then we can select this face and go into bevel and bevel the whole thing, go into my modifiers, and again do like more segments, and we get the exact same thing that we have in Maya. And ZBrush is not going to be any different. The only thing that we need to understand about ZBrush is that the tools work a little bit different. They have its own system, and it's called Zmodeler. So first things first, I need to make this a Polymesh 3D so that I can start working on this object. Before that, it was only just like a 3D mesh, but it was not a polymesh. So a lot of the tools that we normally use won't be available. Now you can see that I have this shortcut right here. I'm actually going to be saving this, standard UI, or no, not standard, like this specific UI for you guys. Let me do that just right now so that I don't forget later on. There we go. So here in documents, I'm gonna save it right there. So in case you want to use my exact same element, so I just click Zmodeler here and I'm inside of the Zmodeler panel. You can also do B, C, and M all the way down here to select your Zmodeler. Now, by default, Zmodeler is going to be set up to QMesh, which is like an extrude. It's not exactly like it's not exactly an extrude, but it's very similar. So I'm going to be able to extrude this out and then extrude this like this, right? So in a way, it works very similar to ZBrush and Maya. Like all of the tools are going to be working in a very similar fashion. The only difference is the following. In Maya, you usually are going to press right click and jump into the mode that you want to select to work either edges, vertices, and faces. And depending on which tool you use, you're going to be working on that guy. In Blender, you have all of your modeling tools over here, and by pressing 1, 2, and 3, you change in between all of the sections. Again, you can do faces, you can do like faces here, you can do edges, and you can do vertices. In ZBrush, everything is on at the same time. And I know the other softwares also have something similar, but in this case, if you put your mouse on top of a face, it's going to be on face mode. If you go on top of an edge, it's going to be edge mode. And if you go on top of a vertex, it's going to be point mode. Now, the interesting thing about this is once you place your mouse, for instance, on an edge here, if I press a space bar, I'm going to get all the actions that I'm going to be able to do with the edge. Only the actions that we can do with the edge. I'm not going to be accessing any other component. So for instance, if I want to do something like what we did in ZBrush and Blender, I'm just going to hit bevel. And then once you select the action, all of the other options that the action has are going to be down here. So for instance, I can say edge loop complete. And if I do here, you can see that we get the exact same thing. Now, once we have this, there's like several things that we can like modify. So for instance, right here, we only get a bevel. But if I press spacebar again, you can see how many modifiers I want. So for instance, if I want like 8 rows, what's going to happen here is I'm going to get this, right? Like 8 divisions. And if I want to get that round, I'm going to say soft edge. And that way, we're going to go in, there. and we're going to create a soft edge. Okay, so the way this works, or the way that all of the Zmodeler elements work, is by selecting which specific element we want to work on, and then utilizing the tools and the options inside that element. So for instance, with QMesh, right now if I press QMesh, I can select a lot of different things here. I can do, for instance, an inset, and just inset this face around. I can do this again. Let's go back to, like, let's say QMesh, and I can push this out, and then I can do like another push out, and then I can go here and say, hey, you know what, like I want to poly loop the whole thing. We're going to be talking about polygroups in the next video. So I'm going to go here, polygroup, poly loop, say that one, go back to QMesh, and in QMesh I'm going to select, let's say, QMesh, but instead of a target, I'm going to say polygroup all, and I'm going to do this. And you can see all of the polygroups that have the same color are going to be affected this way. Now, since there's other colors over there, that's what's happening here. Let's go back to polyloop, and then just click, and I'm going to press Alt to switch colors here. And now we're going to do the QMesh. There we go. So the Zmodeler tool is one of the tools that we're going to be using the most. If you don't feel comfortable with it just yet, don't worry. We're going to be covering some exercises that are actually very, very simple. But the Zmodeler tool is a very quick and easy way to access a lot of the similar tools that we have here inside of Maya and Blender, for instance, so that we don't have to jump in between softwares. That's one of the solutions that ZBrush came up with a couple years ago when they introduced this feature, so that we don't have to jump over there. Now, here's where a little bit of theory comes into place. We're going to be using something called dynamic subdivision right here. So if you open your geometry tab and you go into dynamic subdivision and press dynamic, this is pretty much as going into Maya and saying number 3, which is a smooth mode, or going into Blender, going into object mode and adding a smooth modifier, like a subdivision surface. So it's pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference is that we're going to be accessing it through this option right here. And there's one shortcut that I really want you guys to learn, which is Shift D and D. Okay, I'm gonna say yes, always yes. So that means that every time I press Shift D, I'm gonna go out of subdivision mode, and every time I press D, I'm gonna go into dynamic subdivision, which is gonna be this thing right here. Now, the points that you're seeing here, those are the position of the vertex that we have on our low poly mesh, and this that we're seeing right here, this is just a pre-visualization of how our object is gonna look. And here's where one of the most important principles of hard surface comes into place. That is support edges. Anytime you do a subdivision modifier, what's going to happen is the 3D software is going to try to average out the distance in between the points. So if we want a hard edge, if we want this side of the little like gun here that we have to be a lot like tighter, a lot like sharper, we definitely need to have another edge loop right here. And there's a lot of ways to do it. For instance, one way would be to just create a very small extrusion here, like something like this. Let me get rid of, there's like the line, so no alignment. There we go. So I'm gonna do something like this. Oh my god, why is it making it so difficult? It's making it difficult because of the polygroup over here, but that's fine. Let me polygroup that and just, there we go. So now it's only here. So if we do a very small element right there, this creates an edge loop here that's really close to another edge loop. And when we press D, you can see that now we get a super sharp edge right here. And there's a very useful tool we're going to be using quite a bit in edge mode, which is called insert. And insert will allow me to insert edge loops that are going to support the elements like this. Now, there's two ways to do this. That's one of the ways, which is to use support edges. As you can see, like I can do this and this, and if I do a D now, you can see that all of those places where we have support edges are going to be sharper. That's one of the principles of hard surface modeling that we're going to be using quite a bit. However, there's another one. I don't like it as much as the one that I'm showing you right now. Because it's not super compatible with a lot of other softwares. So if you are going to be exporting this object into another package, you might have some issues with it. But if I were to go into this polygroup right here, I'm going to press Control Shift and click to isolate this guy. I can go here to crease and I can say crease, okay, crease border. And what's going to happen now is there's a new line that has been inserted there. It's not an edge loop per se, but if I press D, it's going to look pretty much the exact same way as an edge loop would. So for instance, if I grab this pink border right here, let me grab that. Let me make this small. Let me see if I can. Okay, I'm actually going to go here and poly loop this, so it's a little bit easier to grab. Like, there we go. Control Shift click. Control Shift and click there. That's one of the shortcuts. We're gonna be talking about polygroups in the next video. Don't worry. If this is a little bit confusing, that's fine. Here I'm just gonna like hide all of the things that I don't want. I just want to keep this face. And again, if I say crease and I crease that line, you can see that now there's two like very small lines there, like dotted lines. And if I press D, now it looks like that thing has extra support edges when there's actually not any support edges. So it's a way to fake the support edges by using creases. But the problem is that, as you can see, whereas I mentioned, some softwares don't work very well with those. So that's why I have the school, or I have the tendency to just insert an edge loop. Even though that's going to give me more geometry, I feel like when working with this sort of modeling techniques, it's going to be a lot better. Now, if at any point you add creases and you don't know how to delete them, just uncrease all, and that's going to bring you back to the origin. So again, it's the exact same thing, or using creasing is very similar to going here into insert and like inserting one edge loop right there and one edge loop up here, and you can see that the result is going to be pretty similar. Crease will give you a super sharp effect, but we can very easily get to that same effect by adding just a couple more edge loops. Like whenever you have a very sharp border, I usually recommend having one on each side of the border. And now when we do this, you can see that's pretty much the same effect that we had with the crease, but this is actual geometry. Like we're actually adding geometry to the model, and I believe from my experience that this is going to be a little bit better to model than using creases. I personally don't like using creases. However, there's the information in case you can use them and like to use them. Feel free to do so as well. And that's it, guys. This is it for the first video. Again, just a very basic introduction, just comparing how the modeling techniques work and taking a look at one of the most important principles in hard surface, which is support edges. So I'm going to stop it right here. I'll see you back on the next one when we talk about polygroups. So there you go. Let's go.